All right, good morning, everyone. We'll just give this another minute to wait for more people to join before we get started. And going on 1 minute. Just going to give it another couple minutes as people start filing in here, and we'll get going at probably about 11:03. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Alex with eMDTec. I have with me today John Fretz, my partner, Joe and Paul from the Compliancy Group, and this is going to be our webinar on HIPAA compliance. Compliance comes home, how to maintain HIPAA compliance in a remote world. Just so everyone knows, this webinar will be recorded, and we will send out a copy to everyone once the webinar is finished and we've moderated everything. If you have any questions, please either raise your hand or use the chat feature. And we'll just get rolling now. Joe, if you want to move to the next slide. So eMDTec, we're a healthcare IT service provider founded in 2014. It's myself, Alex Beauchamp, partner John Fretz. Combined, we have about 30 years of experience in the IT world for healthcare offices. We focus primarily on small and medium-sized healthcare practices, providing full-service IT solutions along with compliance, security, and everything in between. Go ahead. And then let's say we have the Compliancy Group. I don't know if Joe, you want to introduce you guys?
Hey, this is Paul. Actually, I'll take that one if you don't mind, Alex. By the way,
Sure, go.
Thank you very much for having us today. I greatly appreciate it. Excited to join you guys and everybody out there in the remote world we're living in. I hope it's going well. I join you today from my house in Memphis, where I have a 2-year-old in diapers and a 6-year-old running around like crazy. So I hope everyone's world is at least mildly chaotic like mine. I revel in my misery. So I am with Compliancy Group. Like I said, my role is Vice President of Cybersecurity. What that really means is that I kind of am the technical face of Compliancy Group. Who we are as a whole, Compliancy Group is a 15-year-old company. We come out of the auditor space, so we were founded as HIPAA auditors. Today, we are something of industry thought leaders around HIPAA, what compliance means, the way that regulation is enforced. And our seal of compliance, which you see here, is endorsed by 40 plus major medical associations. So they basically say that this seal is the way that their members illustrate their compliance. Today, what we're going to talk about is this, what does HIPAA mean in the remote world? What are we supposed to do? Obviously, you can't pick up all the security from your office and take it to everybody's house. We're going to talk about the specific technologies and requirements associated with them that you have to use in order to do a telehealth. And then I'm going to kind of try to make sense out of the rest of HIPAA for you, because I'm sure most of you out there are aware technology is one symptom of the HIPAA problem, but that's not all there is to it. And this actually bleeds over into this remote workforce, right? So the policy and procedural parts of this, that didn't change when you guys all went home. And a couple of times throughout this, I'll probably lean on you guys, Alex and John, to help me talk about some of the tech. But primarily, if it's okay, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and hit the HIPAA side. So first of all, what we're talking about today is more than just the telehealth application that you guys are using to talk to the patients themselves. It's the way that you're sharing these medical records. If you're using EHR and you're using the mobile versions because now you've had to go home, the mobile devices that you're using, what do you have to do to secure those? What about them needs to be tagged for compliance? And then, if this extends to the folks that are doing like remote patient monitoring, you need to understand that it not only affects your local environment, but you're actually actively out there looking into patient worlds. And so, your environment needs to be secured as well. Now, before we get real deep into this, because Compliancy Group has this, thought leader position in HIPAA, when this happened and everybody rushed home, our phones absolutely blew up. And I'm sure a lot of you saw that right when the COVID crisis started, the president got on TV and announced that telehealth was going to be easier. And they were relaxing some HIPAA requirements around it to make it where everybody could have access to telehealth. So we got a ton of questions. I mean, it just ranged from, wait, so there's no more HIPAA law? I mean, that was probably the most common, is the phone ringing and somebody literally going, so HIPAA is suspended? I don't have to worry about any of this. And we had to say, no, there are specific things that'll change. And then, I mean, it goes farther. It's, well, I mean, what do I have to secure at my house? What's considered PHI when I go home? Do I actually have to do a risk assessment at every single employee's home? How does that work? I'm invading their privacy. So we're going to try to hit most of these today and at least give you some clarity, especially around what has and hasn't changed. So I want to hit that one first and foremost, because I think it's on everybody's mind. All right. Again, I'll repeat myself. HIPAA did not go away because COVID happened. Okay. As a matter of fact, 90% of it didn't change at all. The first two things that changed, they made telehealth easier by eliminating restrictions on where you can get medical treatment from. So now you can basically find a doctor anywhere in the country and use them, and it doesn't matter that they're not licensed to do medicine in your particular state, basically. It alleviated some of the responsibilities for doctors and who they could see. The same thing with Medicare beneficiary cost sharing. It made it easier. It made it more flexible for the providers to reduce this. These are billing mechanisms. It doesn't have anything at all to do with your need for compliance from a privacy perspective or from a security perspective. Now, what did change in that kind of IT world is about the platforms themselves that you use to do telehealth. Now, as I explain this, I want to make very clear that while you can do something, it does not necessarily mean you should. So what you can do now, according to the law, is there are platforms that were not HIPAA compliant before. They're not HIPAA compliant right now. For example, the version of Zoom that we are on today is a video conferencing version of Zoom. It is not the top tier SKU that is HIPAA compliant. If you're using the cheap version of Zoom, that's not the product that they made for PHI transfer and for telehealth. They have another one that's a lot more expensive, and with that one, they'll sign your BA. What they've done during this emergency, and it's happened before, is they've suspended the need for the business associate agreements with your telehealth provider. In layman's terms, you can now use Apple's FaceTime, even Facebook Messenger, Google Hangouts, the non-HIPAA compliant version of Zoom. Basically, any non-public facing video conferencing system can be used for telehealth temporarily while this emergency is in place. So again, while you can, I'll raise the question, should you, right? If you think about it, the reason these things aren't HIPAA compliant to begin with is because the manufacturer of this software, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Because the manufacturer of the software is doing something or not doing something that lowers the security of it, right? So I'll pick on Zoom, for example. Their HIPAA compliant SKU, that telehealth system, is encrypted from end to end. All these back doors are closed. There's a bunch of chat features that are turned off, and you have a lot more control over who can join and participate in sessions. If you're not paying for that, if you don't have that service, whether or not the government is going to fine you for using it right now, there are two major risks you have. First and foremost, you're risking your patient's privacy. These providers, Apple, Facebook, they didn't design this to protect patient privacy. So whether or not you would be fined, imagine the mud you get on your face if you share somebody's telehealth session and it ends up on YouTube because you used an insecure app. And then the other side of it is when this law changes, when the emergency is over, everything snaps right back into place. You're going to be right back on the hook for it. So if you're using something that's not compliant, you basically have to monitor it every day to make sure that this doesn't change and you're not breaking the law again tomorrow. And the last thing I'll throw out there, I did not say that everything that makes video on your phone is compliant. You can't use TikTok or Twitch or whatever the kids are using to like stream video games now. Anything that's public facing is totally out. This is all that has changed around the HIPAA law. Everything else is completely in place for you in your remote environment. Now, I'll touch one more time because when we talk about video conferencing and telehealth, I think it's important for even the layman to have a basic understanding. What makes the Zoom that's HIPAA compliant different from the one that's not? What's different about Apple's FaceTime and Microsoft Teams? Okay. First of all, I said it a second ago, it's end-to-end encryption. That means that the session that you're in can't be seen by somebody outside. It's all encrypted, and the transmit of it itself is encrypted. If you record it, that's encrypted too. The other thing is they're verifying the connection. They make sure you are you and I am me, and we can't be impersonated. And some bigger companies are even take it so seriously that you have hospitals that wouldn't use the HIPAA compliant version of Zoom. They've literally inboarded this into their environment. I doubt that's many of you out there, but understand, even if your system is all on your servers, you're responsible now for maintaining end-to-end encryption and securing and verifying those connections. It doesn't get you off the hook for HIPAA compliance. And the last thing that you got to think about is who has access to set up these sessions, who can control who joins them. And then the big one, remember, everybody went home. If you didn't send your employees home with a computer from the office that has all of, say Alex is your IT provider here, then they have tools on those computers to protect them. But if you go home and you work off your home laptop that you share with your family, none of that stuff is there. So I can secure my video session all day long. I can make sure that Zoom is on the HIPAA compliant version, or I'm on Microsoft Teams. But if you've got a keylogger or a malicious actor that's taking control of the operating system you're working from, none of that is any good. So you got to remember, while all this telehealth stuff needs to be secured by the provider, it is on you to make sure that your employees' devices they're connecting to this stuff from, that those are actually secure, okay? So just in case anybody thinks this is not happening, it does. These fines were levied just for telehealth. These guys were working for telecommuting, rather. They were working from home. They've been fined in the first case almost $1 million. I want to point something out about these fines, though. We're going to talk a lot about IT security today. And the reason for that is because good IT security prevents a breach. A breach creates an investigation. An investigation leads to your audit and fine. Okay? These folks right here, if you notice the first one, that laptop, doesn't say it was an unencrypted laptop that was stolen. That would be an additional fine. If you look at what happened here, the laptop and the backup drive were presumably actually encrypted. The reason that these guys were fined almost $1 million is because when the investigation starts, all they did is get it stolen out of their car. They didn't do a risk analysis that year. And they didn't have policies and procedures telling the person who got the laptop stolen not to leave a hospital device in their car when they went home that night, right? It's a functional breakdown. So while we talk about security today, I need to emphasize to you that most of the fines that are levied are because your employees do something dumb, a malicious actor inside your organization deliberately does something, or worst case scenario, like 26% of the errors are caused by the IT team or internal IT, external, internal, whatever. So you've got to check everybody's work, and you have to do consistent risk assessments. I call it trust but verify, right? So everybody that's doing work needs to have something in the background that's a system of checks and balances. We call those assessments and audits. So it's important to talk to your patients, but I do want to pause here and remind you about your employees. I think this really gets overlooked, and we would do you a disservice if we don't bring it up. This is my team. You can't see all of us. We couldn't fit us all on the screen, but we're based in New York. Like I said, I live in Memphis. A couple of us are in California and Florida. We were a tight-knit team that never had these daily meetings before all this started. We're meeting daily at this point through video conferencing. We were also not the video people. I'll tell you, most demos and most calls I do, I'm turning the camera off immediately. Use these tools to your advantage. Keep your team tight and close. Because remember, everybody here, when you hired them, you didn't say, how good are you at working from home? That wasn't a job requirement. Everybody's not as balanced and even when they get back into this world. The refrigerator calls them quickly, the TV, the laundry, all these things are distractions. Bring your team in and talk to them and do it in a secure way. Remember, what's said in a video conference can be shared somewhere else if you're using an insecure system. So how do you talk to them? What do you use? I think there's really two different things to consider here. One is internal, and let's call it a team building tool. And so for that, I really like Microsoft Teams. If you guys haven't checked it out, I know the guys like Alex and these guys at eMDTec, they have a real strong presence with Microsoft. This is baked into their 365 platform, and it is a combination of internal video and conference calling and chat all baked into one. It is really, really cool, and it is designed out of the box, when configured correctly, to be used in HIPAA compliant environments. The other one, like what we're using now, Zoom. This is how you talk to your patients. This is how you communicate. Pick a good, strong platform with high video quality and strong security. And make sure that you're taking advantage. Like I said, I strongly emphasize, use the video part of it. Go ahead. Don't worry about putting on pants. I'm sitting here in my boxers probably, right? For all anybody knows. But go ahead and look the customer or your patient in the face and connect with them, because it's difficult to maintain human connections when we are all working remotely. So while security is important, I think the human aspect of it can't be overlooked, right?
Joe or Paul, just to jump in, just to hit on this real quick. These are secure chats, but it has to be configured correctly, and that does take some expertise. So if you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to us so we make sure that you are using it correctly, it is secure and up to date and working how it should be.
Yeah, that's a great point you make, Alex. Something that that I'll echo there is that Office 365, Google G Suite, all these tools that are HIPAA compliant, if you read their user license agreement, their compliance is based on what you do with it, how you configure it, how you audit it, how it's set up for monitoring and reporting. So please understand, there is no such thing as a tool that's straight up out of the box just is ready for your PHI. You've got to take a look at it. And as a risk assessment, you have to look at it at least annually. It's not set it up and forget it, right, Alex? Like 365 stuff changes. It's a moving target.
It changes every day. They're releasing updates, new features, and those have to be reviewed annually to make sure, if not even more than annually, when a new feature is added that you're actively using, that it fits your policies, it's compliant, and keeps all that data safe.
And even some modules within those platforms themselves, like so you have the full Google suite, but there are certain modules inside of it that are not HIPAA compliant and never will be, right?
Correct.
So yeah, that's the great point to make. Thank you. So, and this kind of leads into that, right? It goes beyond your telehealth. You are responsible for securing everything in these remote environments the same way you were at the office. The challenge actually increases for you. It doesn't get easier. Access controls. When we say that, it's who can get to what and how. In your office, in your little environment right there, it's very easy to control through closed doors, a little Active Directory or Azure management. Everybody's got access to what they need and not what they should not. But as soon as everybody headed home, suddenly we especially saw everybody grab Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever they possibly could and dumped everything they think they need for work, and they shared it to all their employees. That's not access control. That's not data management. You have to have an organized system that still says there's no reason that the receptionist can actually see the charts that the doctor completes, right? She has no interest in a certain portion of this treatment. So you have to maintain that stuff, which goes into your audit controls. Yes, you are expected to do a form of assessment against all of these remote environments. Now, Alex, I'm going to ask, that doesn't mean that a tech has to go to everybody's site, right? Surely, I mean, we can use tools to get in there and at least validate, you know, the router password at their home's not password, right?
Yeah, for sure. We can definitely work with the remote employees without having to send a tech on site, especially not now with COVID and coronavirus. We can hop on with them, check to make sure the router's configured correctly, they have some type of antivirus on that device, or possibly even provide them something while they're working home temporarily to ensure that device is secure and safe.
And just for the record, the antivirus tools you would put on, they don't invade the employee's privacy, right? You're not putting something on a home computer that then you guys are watching them, you know, check their personal emails.
Not at all. It's they're lightweight agents that just make sure any files that are accessed, links, stuff like that is all safe, that there's no malicious activity, keyloggers like that, nor do we have the time or the interest to actually watch any employees.
Right.
Wouldn't be worth
Right.
our time.
And so that's if you look at my chart here, what did we just do? So we added both audit controls through the tools that he can put in and make sure no breaches happen, and endpoint protection. For everybody out there that's not a techie person like me or Alex, I use the term endpoint protection a lot. I mean antivirus, anti-malware, anti-spyware, as much security as you can throw at the computer. When I say endpoint protection, I'm a firm believer you have enough security when you run out of money. You can't buy your way out of this. Like the CIA got hacked, the NSA got hacked, right? So everybody needs the best that they can put on it. So when I say endpoint protection, what we really mean is a tool, like you just said, to make sure the hackers and the bad guys don't get you. And then encryption. So here's the thing. Because you went home and you start working from some home computer, and again, I'm going to throw this out there, guys, if you possibly can, get your remote workers devices that you own. Send the laptop home, get the desktop set up if you can, and if not, I recommend through a VPN sending them back to home base and letting them work in their machines there. The safest way to secure this environment is to keep them on an endpoint that somebody like Alex completely controls and protects. But if you have to work on that home computer and you can't do it any other way, it's got to be encrypted, whether that means a software tool that we go in and throw in that throws in EFS, or hopefully they've got something that you can turn on in Windows 10. I think there's a common misconception that only Windows 10 Pro can be encrypted and that you would have to upgrade all the local computers. That's not true either, Alex, right? There's a bunch of different ways that you can accomplish encryption short of buying everybody a new computer.
Correct. There's definitely ways you can do it. You just have to make sure that when it is enabled, it's something that, excuse me, can be audited and proven that if something were to happen, we have proof that this device was encrypted and that we can show that to anyone that's asking for that. Not just saying, hey, I encrypted this. Well, where's your proof? The device is gone now. We can't actually physically look. We need something that shows that it was encrypted. And there are tools available that we have that we can work with you to provide that.
That goes back to my audit controls, right? This is a circular thing, folks, and I hope you see this. And now the business associate, this is Alex right here for you. In order for him to come in and do this stuff, put in these audit controls, put in this endpoint protection, enforce this encryption, all the stuff that's needed, you have to have a contract with him called a business associate agreement. So if you are out there working with a provider, your nephew down the street does your IT, or somebody else is coming into that environment, make sure you've got a business associate agreement in place. Just because you had an emergency and you had to go home doesn't mean that unqualified people can help you with this. Remember, they end up with access to your patient data, and that's just not okay. Everybody in that chain has to be HIPAA compliant. There's no outs in this. So this is what it looks like. I like this graphic. I think it makes this very simple. We understand you're not going to have a firewall at every employee location. Nobody's spending $2,000 or more to secure that endpoint, right? But you do have a router there. Whether it came through your provider like Comcast or you bought it at Best Buy and it's your Wi-Fi router, you have this device. That manufacturer, 9 out of 10 times, put admin or admin 1234, something that you can easily look on the device, Google it, and find out what the password is. That's got to change, guys. The same way that you can't have an open, unsecured Wi-Fi at your house and go, I don't care if the neighbors jump on. We do now. You're doing telehealth. You're now securing somebody's PHI. All this changes. And somebody like Alex and them can come in very quickly, log into one machine in the environment, ask really simple questions, and help go in there and change this stuff. And now, being honest, they've secured your employees' environment. They've actually helped them out quite a bit and closed security loopholes. The same thing we keep saying, endpoint protect, and I'm going to take it one farther. All of the sudden, a lot of times you're taking PHI out and putting it on a local machine to work on it. Then you got to back that up. So yes, your laptops, yes, your server at the office. Now when you go home, everything's got to be backed up, including if you're keeping PHI on a phone or you're storing pictures or any of that stuff, you've got to back all this data up. And there are utilities to do this. The same thing that I'll kind of sideline and say about endpoint protection. Guys, there are tools for Mac. Don't let anybody tell you that there's no antivirus or endpoint protection for Mac. It exists and it's needed. The same thing goes for your iPhones, your Androids, every device that you own that you can access PHI is what we mean. I'm not stopping at the desktop or the laptop here, folks. Back it up, protect it, and encrypt it. Use a VPN. And now, Alex, I'd like to pause because I don't have the best answer for this. One of the biggest questions we get is, what is a VPN? Can you just break that down for me real quick?
Sure. VPN, virtual private network. You can think of it as if we were to take a cable or a virtual cable connected to your laptop, your desktop, your iPhone at home, even your iPad, and that cable runs all the way back to your office. And any data that you're transferring between your laptop, your endpoint device, and your office is then encrypted over this virtual cable that we're providing. It kind of puts your device back inside the corporate network and keeps the data inside that corporate network. Anything that transfers across that is encrypted, so someone can't see that. And it just gives us a way to kind of control where data is flowing, how it's flowing, and making sure it's safe while you're working outside of the office.
So this is why I don't have to have a firewall at my house, right? That's what the VPN does, is it sends me back to a firewall somewhere else. So again, what I like about this is you're telling me that if I do this, technically speaking, all my employees are still behind a firewall, which means they're all HIPAA compliant.
Depending on how they're working with their data, correct? As long as they're not taking that data, saving it, and then even they take that data, they print it out and they leave it at home, that's another big risk. That VPN isn't going to protect you from that. You still have to have some policies in place on how any of that data they're accessing or using is handled while they're home.
Leads right into this, man. I think it's important to pause. Now, everybody, I promise I am not about to do a big what is HIPAA explanation here that's going to be terrible and take 40 minutes. Okay. It's a very, very long law. It's 1,000 pages. I haven't read the whole thing. I would rather set my face on fire and put it out with a fork than wade through the entire HIPAA Act, okay? But here's what we need to understand about this. It's not just security. As much as we talk about it, Alex just hit on something really important. I can secure the endpoint, I can secure the firewall, I can audit all of this stuff, but I haven't done anything with the patient's privacy. So in case anybody doesn't know, HIPAA is written by Health and Human Services. They're who decides if you get fined. That makes sense, right? But if you don't know who enforces it, I find it very interesting. HIPAA is actually enforced and investigated, the people that audit you, the Office of Civil Rights. I have a civil right to privacy. And if you expose that and you release my stuff, you violated my civil rights. So when the privacy rule is all about how you interact with the patient. So it extended now from your office out to your house. And we'll touch on that in a minute. But think about all the different ways that you had to close the door at the office, keep the screen covered when the patients walk past, flip the charts around. You now have, in my case, my wife, 2 kids running around the house. I have to do the same thing with that stuff here. That's the privacy rule. The security rule, which is kind of what we've talked a lot about today, is not just IT either. As a matter of fact, IT is part of it. That's your security risk assessments, all the technical remediation that's got to go in place. For everybody that's a provider, you heard about this the first time through MacroMeps and meaningful use, right? That's 1/3 of one of the rules. All of the rest of this still has to be done. And if you're not taking a look at the privacy portion, the physical audit, remember, Alex's folks are going to be able to tell you if their router is secure, if their desktop is secure, if it's backed up. You have to have a policy in place about whether or not they can print things. I recommend you don't let them. Print is bad. If you don't have to do paper at home, don't touch it at all. But if you do, you have to have policies and procedures and a shredder and a locking file cabinet and all of the things you would have to have at your office transfer straight to the home. So that's the physical part of it, right? And then there's the administrative and privacy audits. You have to go through and examine how your workers react, how they work every day, how they access files, who they give them to, who they send them to, etc. And the last one, that big green one over there, Omnibus. Remember, I told you, in order to work with Alex and his team, you've got to have a business associate agreement on file with them. It goes past just Alex and his team. And for right now, we're going to say the need for this is suspended with telehealth. It's not with your phone provider. You still have to have a business associate agreement with whoever's storing call recordings, voicemails, the messages that you get. If you've got a print vendor, in most cases, you need a BAA on file with them too. So it goes farther than just your IT provider, and it becomes a piece of contract management. When you went home, this is a good to stop and say, did I just add a vendor? And if so, did I get a business associate agreement on file with them? If you don't, you cannot comply with the HIPAA law, because to make all this make sense to you, this is all one thing. This is what HIPAA looks like. These are the rules that's broken down into. If you're only doing the 1/3 of one rule, great, you don't get breached. But if in any incident ever happens, you will be fined millions of dollars for everything that you're missing. So it's really important to understand that this is just part of it. When you talk about your risk analysis, I'm not going to go through each audit. I think that would take a long time. If you take a look just at the I one though, I think it's pretty eye-opening. What are we supposed to do here? Look, first you gather information. So what did Alex say? His folks are going to come in, take a look at your environment, audit it as it sits. Hey, I don't know if you're aware of this. When we went in, Sandra has Wi-Fi with no password whatsoever. What do you do with that information? You evaluate it. You say, look, that's extremely risky. We can't have this. And we take action against it. We call that a gap remediation. You find the gap, you identify what needs to be done, and you put that thing into place. We're not going to be able to cover absolutely everything and close every hole. You do it within the best of your ability, and you put forth a good faith effort under the law to comply. That's why hiring an expert to try to help you do this is critically important. I think it's easy to argue that most people are not qualified to do this all by themselves. I'm going to give you a few pointers though that, again, I keep promising it goes a little bit beyond IT. So notice some of this is IT stuff, and Alex and his team can help you with it. Some of it is in your policies and procedures. When you train your employees, you need to go over this. And by the way, at the end of this presentation, we are going to provide everybody that attends a bring your own device policy. This is what you use because you're now allowing employees to use mobile devices to do telehealth, for example, or their own computers. And we're also going to provide you a telehealth worker policy. This is a policy your employees, you customize it to you, and they need to read and be trained on it. That tells them not to do this stuff. For example, you can't share the same desk as your spouse side by side with the screens right here. It's cute. I know you guys are in love. He or she can see the other screen. It's not okay. So if you have to share that desk, you need to be facing oppositely, which I'll jump ahead over here. Makes you think about the phone call, right? I also can't take a work call with my wife in the room if I'm talking about a patient. If I'm going to be talking to the receptionist and we're booking John Smith for his next appointment, I can't be in the room with my teenager or my spouse or any of these folks because I'm violating that guy's privacy. So you need to figure out where in your home you can go for private phone calls and make sure everybody knows when dad locks himself in the closet back here, you can't come in here and bother me. I'm on the phone with a patient. I hate paperwork in the office. I hate paperwork outside of the office. The less of it you have, the lower your risk. But if you sent somebody home and they're going to be printing, did it occur to you to send a shredder? Has anybody assessed their risk at the house? Do they have a shredder? Did you ask them if they have a locking file cabinet or even an office that they're working from? Or did you send somebody home with a stack this thick full of medical records and they threw it down on the bed and went and took a shower? That's your problem if they're not trained correctly. The VPN thing, it can't be overemphasized. People don't like change. You don't like adding these extra steps into your day. You cannot be safe to work from home by simply accessing the internet through that thing you bought at Comcast or Best Buy. There is a reason that HHS is mandating the firewall at your office, and it is not because they want to give people like Alex more money. That's not the deal. The thing that Comcast put in, that thing that you bought at Best Buy, is a toy by comparison to the thing at your office, and you need to get back to home base. That's what your VPN is for, and you have to train your employees. When you start a work session, you're not clocked in until that VPN is connected. This is a you must, you always, and you will. And then we have to be extra diligent, guys. Training your employees is an ongoing, all the time thing. You have to continually pace and enforce to these folks. Security is everybody's job. Compliance is everybody's job. Realize we are seeing the most massive uptake in spam and phishing attacks and straight out hacks that we've seen in years, because COVID has everybody glued to their phone and everybody glued to every single email that comes in. I've told my parents, they're older, look, if it's an email that has the word COVID, coronavirus, or any form of news in it, delete it. This is why you have news feeds like Apple News. This is why you got that neat little app on your phone. Assume what comes in is garbage, and this doubles down for healthcare workers. You guys are under attack, and your employees need to understand it, okay? And then the last one, in your office, it goes without saying, right? You're so used to either when you get up, you shut the door, or you log off, or you close the screen, or all of the above. But at home, my kid just screamed. I've got to run out of the room and figure out what's happening. If there's other people in this house, I have to close that computer screen. log off, whatever it takes. So ideally, you get Alex and his team to make sure everybody's computers have a log off time set for at least a few minutes. If you're not standing there at the machine, sitting there at the machine, it shouldn't be logged in where there's even a potential for people to accidentally run into protected health information. Now, Alex, I'm going to ask you, I think this is a cool slide, but in real time, I mean, how serious is the threat we're seeing around these COVID emails?
Yeah, as of recent with COVID the past month, there's been a huge uptick in what spammers, hackers are looking to do. They're sending out these emails and they're really targeting healthcare providers. For example,
Hmm.
Alex will be right back.
Uh-oh. No, I'll go ahead and jump in for him there.
All
I
right.
think I knew where we were going with it. And John, unless you want to take that, John.
No, I'm okay. He just lost power on his desktop.
Oh no. Oh no. Well, technical difficulties, guys. I'll tell you, these are good things to look for. I think it's important for everybody to take a glance through this and understand that. I'll give a good example. My email address, is compliancygroup.com. It comes in, it's missing the L or the I. It's hard to note because in lowercase, they look kind of the same, or uppercase looks the same. Look, you have to be diligent for this stuff, and we strongly recommend, although let's say it's in addition to the minimum, you have to train your employees at least on a semi-annual basis on what phishing looks like. I believe this should be an every month, all the time thing with phishing testing. Guys, there are very simple programs out there. Alex and John have one that's fabulous that they can put you in that will actively fish your employees. Send them stuff like we're talking about. Send them fake emails, trick them into looking at it, and then show them how they screwed up. If you do this consistently, people become on their guard. They know their boss is going to find out that they, clicked on this bad email, unless they're the boss, in which case it's embarrassing for them. But more importantly, you start thinking about it. You're like, wow, they tricked me. I would have thought I knew what I was doing here. Nobody wants to be the victim of a scam, but it's very easy to get going in your day-to-day. You're banging through emails. One jumps up. You're like, oh God, they're going to reopen everything tomorrow. Click. And these people own you. I call them the script kiddies. They're writing it every single day to come after you, and it's not that difficult. Hacking at this point is a commodity. I can leave here today, go online, and pay to hack somebody or pay someone to build out entire campaigns and just give me the data that they mine. Be aware that means you too. So what does it really take? I keep saying it's not just IT. What is it that they expect you to do? Everything starts with an audit, okay? If you do nothing else, you have to begin with a security risk assessment. And when you sent everyone home to all these like workspaces that you've never been to before, your last risk assessment just went right out the window, folks. It's no longer valid because you did a risk assessment against your office. So it's mandated. You need to get someone to look at these environments through at least a remote session and send out a questionnaire to your employees. Like I said, we have the telehealth policy that explains to them what's supposed to be done and how they take a look at their environment. Secondarily, put these policies and procedures into place. If you have all your other policies, you've got your access control policies and your device policies and all that stuff's in good shape back at the office. Do you have a telehealth worker policy? Do you have a BYOD policy, a bring your own device policy? If not, again, wait to the end of the presentation. You can come right to us. We'll let you have this stuff for free. It's something we're providing people during this crisis, but customize it, put it into place, and make sure it reflects what you're doing. There's nothing worse than a policy that's not a reflection of your own organization. If you take a policy, put it together, and it says something that you aren't doing, all you've done is provide an auditor a list of things to fine you for. Okay? Very simple. You gave them a list of crap you don't do. Beat this drum until you folks hear me. Work on a VPN. When he gave the VPN explanation, you go, I don't have that. Make a phone call, send an email, get somebody in there. But yes, it's mandated. Yes, you can't be secure without this. It is one of the most important things to start with. Everyone you touch has to have a business associate agreement in place. So take a look at your vendors. Remember, all of the sudden you added X software, or you added this other vendor or that other vendor. Did you complete your contract with them? Did you send them a business associate agreement? And if it's like a provider like Alex, have you vetted them? Do you know that these people are qualified to do what they do? And this is another thing that our clients have. We actually provide a vendor due diligence sheet. So if you're a Compliancy Group customer, we actually give your vendors, like Alex here has to get this form and he has to fill it out. And he's done many of these. And he has to do it over and over and over again, because every customer that he works with on the medical side needs to make sure that he's doing his stuff, right? Do that for everybody. And then the last thing, guys, monitor, protect, encrypt, backup, everything you were doing at the office before. You're not off the hook for anything, folks. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. All they did is make life easier for Zoom or GoToMeeting. It doesn't do very much for you. You're on the hook if there's a breach because you do something bad. You're on the hook for using those tools if you're using the wrong one when this is over, and anything that falls right now in between. A stolen laptop, a lost thumb drive, lost paperwork, all of that stuff that happens at your employee's place can end in millions and millions of dollars in fines for you. Nothing that we've talked about here today is rocket science or is going to cost you $25,000 a year to put in place, but you got to do this stuff, guys. If you don't, you're putting both yourself and your patients at risk. So I want to show this because, and Alex, I'm glad you're back. I just discovered this the other day. One of the most common questions that I get asked all the time is, well, and we actually had this pop up now in our question and answer. Office 365 is backed up. Google is backed up. I'm in the cloud, right? I don't need to back this up. That's not what this says, is it?
No, definitely not. Right inside Microsoft's 365 terms of agreement, they tell you right here, we recommend that you regularly back up your content and data that you store on the service or store using third-party apps and services. They may have your data, but something happens, someone comes in there and deletes it. There's no backup. That's what we come in. We can provide a backup that copies all your data, securely encrypts it, sends it off to a third party outside of Microsoft's cloud. So completely unrelated to any outages they might have, data loss they may have, and keeps it safe and protected. Because right there, coming right from the source, Microsoft says they don't guarantee it, and they recommend that you regularly back it up and use a third party to do that.
I got to be honest. I don't know that I've ever read a user license agreement from a company that says use another company. That is a really telling sign right there. You know what I mean? Like they are literally saying, go pay someone else, huh?
Yeah, for sure. And that's in our top tier service. That's one of the things that we do by default. That's just included on top of 365 because we know that's what Microsoft says, and we don't want any of our clients to have questions that their data is not safe. We just add that in there, keep it protected, and know that we're good. And that third-party company will sign a BAA that's required to make sure that data is protected.
That was my next question. And so for the record, folks, listening in on this today, if you're using 365 SharePoint, 365 email, all this stuff to work with patient records, there's only one copy at Microsoft. As a cybersecurity guy, the first time I saw this, I actually thought the person that said it in the room was wrong. I was like, no, wait a minute, wait. The high availability, I'm not going to nerd out on you here, folks, but what I've learned and what Alex said right here is absolutely correct. What they're saying when they put it in their cloud, they say high availability, they mean you have access from anywhere in the world all the time to multiple ways in to get that same one piece of information, which means and now there's a form of crypto locker, for example, that will go in there and lock up files in the cloud. That means you have highly available access to nothing. So I think it's really important to understand that both from a security side and from a legal regulatory compliance perspective, if you are using 365 or Google for healthcare, you must back that stuff up. And by the way, this, I'll jump ahead and won't show it, but this is also in Google. They tell you the exact same thing. No, we keep one copy of your data, and both companies will tell you we are not backup companies. There's not an add-on module that you can get to actually back it up. We'll archive, but it's still one copy of the data. So I think that's critically important to understand. As is this. I want to bring this home in kind of a visual representation here because we talk so much about the security side, It is critically important that everybody understand HIPAA is a culture. HIPAA turns like a wheel. It is this endless thing. What it is it is a marathon with no finish line. You never lose as long as you can show you're continually running. My foot was there yesterday. It's here today. It's going to be there tomorrow. And that begins. Where does it start, guys? At this point, I think you've heard me saying enough. You know what he's going to say: audits and assessments. That's right. All of them. Remember, the security one, important. The device audit, critical. But so is your high-tech Subtitle D privacy audit. So I'll challenge everyone out there. If I just said that, and I'll say it again, high-tech Subtitle D privacy audit. If you have not done that every single year for the last 6 years, we should have a talk. Maybe I can show you some other things that you're not doing. All of this stuff is mandated, and without it, what you've got is what people call HIPAA light. I see this all the time. They're like, look, I got an IT guy, I got a firewall, I bought some policies online, they don't really reflect what I'm doing, but they're close. I got a HIPAA light. If something happens, I'm not going to be in a lot of trouble. Actually, that is the number one way to fail. The failure rate for HIPAA audits is 94%. That's from HHS. Over the entire term of the law, 94% of customers that are audited fail. I don't think anyone believes that all 94% were willingly and knowingly negligent. I'm not that cynical. I actually believe that most of them thought what they were doing was enough, that the common denominator is HIPAA light. Well, dude, I got a firewall. I did everything that my IT guy said to do. I'm good, right? No, guys. If you're not identifying all your gaps beyond just IT, your functional gaps, your administrative gaps, making the policies reflect what you do inside your organization. And wait, I got to take this one farther. Train your employees on the policies. What good is a password policy if no one in your organization knows how to follow it or uses it? What good is a policy that tells them that they can't use a Google Drive to share your information if there's not something that they've read that tells them, dude, your job is on the line if you do this, right? So not only do you have to train them on it, you have to enforce the rules. Repeated violations should make that person go away. I'm not trying to be harsh. The reality is they're putting everyone at risk. Document management. I think you said a great thing about encryption earlier, Alex, and this question goes for everything we've talked about. Now prove it. You said you encrypted the device. Now prove it. You said you were monitoring and auditing. Great. Can I see? Prove it. Your policies and procedures. Wonderful. I don't need to know that you wrote them 5 minutes ago. Where's last year's version?
Yeah, it's always great to have that copy that you can bring back and share, show whoever asks for it. This is it.
Yeah, you have to have that stuff because otherwise it's your word against the auditor's question. They don't want you to answer it verbally. They want you to hand them this stuff in a tangible way. And guys, I'm going to throw this out there. Bad stuff happens to good people. I said in the beginning, in 15 years, we've never had someone fail an audit. That's not because bad things haven't happened to them. If you have the right policies and procedures, the right processes, can show all your work, can prove that you've done all this stuff to the best of your ability, even when those bad things happen to you, you can still come out of this okay and not be fined and not be penalized for something you couldn't control. So kind of drawing to the end of this here. And, I promised that we would throw some stuff at you that you could have for free coming away. Take a look at this. We'll also make these slides available to you, but come download our BYOD and our remote employee policy and procedures. I think these are easy and can be brought in. Another big thing, you need to get somebody to help you with that risk assessment, and that's going to be a team like Alex's. So reach out to them. I think it's critically important that you assess this environment and decide, don't when I say trust but verify, okay, you think you did everything right, you really need to have somebody else look at this because it's not them that's on the hook for it, it's you. Now, Alex, do we, let's see here, got any questions popping in? Oh, this is a good one. I do have a couple of quick questions if you got time. It says, most of our staff is now working from home. We use eClinicalWorks through a Chrome browser. Do we need a VPN for that? You want to take that one?
Sure. Depending on what they're doing, if you're only accessing eClinicalWorks in that Chrome browser, great. But there's a good chance that you're sharing data, you're copying files, sharing files back and forth. Those files aren't actually protected in eClinicalWorks at that point. They're on your local computer, or you're pulling them off the server at home. We need a VPN to protect those files, or share them back and forth, or use another tool that's provided within, say, Microsoft 365 with SharePoint or files and Teams that are protected under some data governance policies that are built into Teams or 365 to keep that secure.
And I'll actually add one to that. One of the mandates in HIPAA that's extremely clear. So there's two kinds of rule in HIPAA. There's an addressable and there's a requirement. Addressables are not ignorable. It means if you're not doing this, you can do that instead and get away with it, right? So the thing about this that's a requirement is the monitoring, logging, and auditing. Where I struggle with anybody working from home, no matter whether they're working straight to their EHR or not without a VPN, is how can you say that you're monitoring, logging, and auditing that traffic? How can you legitimately say that you know what's happening in that session and that the only place that they went to was eClinicalWorks, for example? So from our perspective, I encourage, could you pass an audit without a VPN in that case? Perhaps. Is it a safe, good practice to do that? No, I think best practice is a VPN if you're working in healthcare.
Yeah, just protect all that data no matter what it is.
Yep. See, and we've got time for one more. Let's see, that one is way too techy. Okay, so this is a good one too. So are all Microsoft 365 products HIPAA compliant?
Off the bat, they're not. They have to be configured for certain things. You might get email from Microsoft 365. That doesn't mean you can straight up shoot your insurance company patient's records through there. There's ways to configure encryption on emails. You can set up secure file sharing so that only a person that you provide a link to has access to. When you're using Microsoft Teams, for example, you can use that internally. If you invite a guest into that group or into that team, all of a sudden you're going to lose any of that privacy because they might not be someone that should be seeing those records. So it's all about how you set them up and how you use them. They can be made HIPAA compliant, but out of the box, if you're just to go to Microsoft and purchase 365 for your organization, it's not going to be compliant. And it's also about what policies you put into place and how you use those that makes it compliant.
And I'll add to that. I think it's important for people to understand. Anytime I get this question, I start with this. Guys, no tool, no software, no widget is HIPAA compliant. That's not how it works. Organizations are HIPAA compliant. So Microsoft and Google, as an organization, within specific business units, are themselves HIPAA compliant. When you get a business associate agreement baked into that product for Microsoft, because by the way, they don't sign yours, it's built into their EULA, right? You have theirs. Read it, and what it's really telling you is, we got our side. If you bought the right SKU, configured the right way, used the right way, our tool can be used in a HIPAA compliant environment. So they are saying that you as an organization, if you are 100% HIPAA compliant yourself and do everything right, then this tool can be used. They're not saying whether it's HIPAA compliant or not, because that's really not a thing. It's a really common misnomer. So that extends to everything, guys. So your firewall, blah, blah, blah. Don't let somebody tell you the firewall is HIPAA compliant. That firewall can be used to help you maintain HIPAA compliance. Same thing with Office 365.
And the same thing with going back to any of your telehealth apps you're using right now. If they're used correctly, they're HIPAA compliant. But if you're sitting outside and your family's sitting on the porch with you and you're doing an e-visit or a televisit, you're not HIPAA compliant at that point. Even though the app that you're using will help you maintain that, it's all about how you use it, when you use it, and what policies you have built around that.
Yeah, nailed it. That's, one thing that I think I really like about working with your team is I work with technology providers all over the country, technically all over the world, and I owned an IT service provider for a very long time. So I kind of speak with a background in this. The eMDTec team has a better understanding of the soft side of HIPAA compliance, the procedural side, the functionality, the way that your techs work, for example, the way that your organization is structured inside is just built for HIPAA. That's the same thing when you look at these other tools and these other teams. So why would I recommend using a Microsoft Teams, but I'm not going to do Zoho, for example, Zoho Chat? Why? Because there's an organizational build in Microsoft there that's designed to help healthcare workers deliver healthcare. They thought about this stuff. It was something that they intended to do, like eMDTec. They're here to help folks like you work in medicine. There are and any organization can work with a medical provider. It doesn't mean they do it well, and it doesn't mean they know what they're doing. So that is one thing that we're super excited to, have you guys as partners. And thank you again for inviting us today, because you're out there fighting the good fight. So that's the reason I'm so glad to be able to join you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Paul, for all the great insight that you've provided us, the availability of the BOAOD policy, work from home policies that everyone will get option to see. I want to thank you for your time, all the great insights you had. And this webinar was recorded. We will be sending a copy of this webinar out with the links and I believe a copy of the slides. And if you have any questions, please, Paul's contact info is right there. John, my partner's contact info is on the screen right now. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to help. Happy to bring up conversations around HIPAA, how you can become compliant, maintain that compliance, get an introduction with you, Paul, and your team at Compliancy Group to keep this moving and make sure you're working from home securely. And once you go back in the office, that you're working from the office securely and compliant.
Absolutely. Take this stuff home with you guys. It never stops. You're in healthcare. So, be diligent and be well and safe, guys. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
for your time. Take care. Be safe.